Airsick Lowlanders, and welcome to Cosmere Quest, the series where we're going to explore every corner of Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere RPG. From Rasharan cultures and Pashendi forms to soulcasting and shardblades, we're here to bring the Cosmere to life at your table. I'm Sheridan.
I'm Nath. That's Rock.
That's Rock. All right, today we're diving into one of the most important parts, if I can get my words right, of the game, which is character creation and demystifying your character sheet. Your character sheet is going to be the gospel for how you run your character throughout your campaign. Super important. We're going to break down the character creation step by step, which is going to start with our secret source suggested step 0.
Very secret.
That was a mouthful. And then we're going to work through the official 8 steps of character creation. That's going to include heroic paths and how pathing works, attributes, skills, expertises, talents, equipment, and finally your story. We'll show you how each of these elements contributes to how your character is built, narratively and on paper.
Let's do it.
That's going to bring us to step 0.
Alrighty.
You okay with that?
Yeah, go.
All right.
Step 0.
Step 0, who is your character?
Who is your character?
This is the secret source step 0. It's just our recommendation based on our personal experiences as a GM of 10 plus years and as players. This is basically before you touch a character sheet or dive into Demiplane or Roll20 or look at the handbook, you should probably have a concept of your character or the type of character that you would like to play. Something that you think is going to be awesome, that you want to dive into and get excited about, instead of getting bogged down in character creation and the mechanics of that first. You want to make sure at the start of everything, you know roughly who you want to play. It is a recommendation only, but I suppose from our personal experiences, we've always found that the characters we've loved to play most have started with a concept first before we've touched anything else.
Yeah, and look, our tables, our games are not at all about min-maxing. We haven't really ever sort of gone down that path, so maybe you're someone who prefers that and that this isn't for you, but we prefer to sort of focus on the storytelling, and we find that a really dynamic, good character that you have in your mind first helps to sort of promote that storytelling.
Step 1, choose your origins. We're going to break this one down into 2 parts. We're going to first talk about ancestry, and then we're going to dive a little bit into cultures. I'll hit it off with ancestry first. This is really basic. It's who you've descended from. In other games, it's going to pretty commonly be referred to as races and species. So in Roshar, there are only 2, at the moment, only 2 species that you can play. You can play a human, which is pretty stock standard, or you can play a stinger. Humans, it doesn't really give you much. I think everyone kind of understands the concept of a human, you'd hope, but they're medium-sized, if that matters to you. And humans, as well as singers, each get a benefit from your ancestry from the get-go. So for humans, the benefit that they get is that they have a free spec into a heroic path talent from your ancestry. Now we do get into pathing and talents and how that works later on, but it's important to understand if you want to go human, you're going to get bonuses or free talents in your heroic paths as you progress through levels. So it starts at level 1, and then at levels 6, 11, 16, and 21, you also get a free extra heroic path talent.
Yeah, alrighty. Singers, on the other hand, are slightly more complicated than the humans, so they actually get their own separate singer talent tree right from the beginning. So if you are, they're a little bit more involved. So if you're not familiar with singers from the Stormlight Archive, or you don't plan on playing one, you don't want the extra homework that sort of goes into learning their talent tree, feel free to skip ahead. We'll put a timestamp here for when we're finished talking about them. For now, the main thing that you gain is a key talent from this tree, and that is called Change Form. So Change Form, it dictates when you can switch between the different forms that your character knows. All right, let's talk about the options.
Yeah, I think from level 1, straight off the bat, without having to do anything or speccing into any part of your singer talent tree, you're going to get 2 forms. This is going to be dull form and mate form. They are flavor forms only. They have no impact to your stats or your character sheet. They don't give you any bonuses. They are really for flavor. Where it gets interesting is that past that, as part of your talent tree from level 1 as singers, you're going to get to opt in to one of 3 categories of forms.
That's right. Alrighty, let's go into them. So forms of finesse, I'll give sort of an overview for each of the forms here. So forms of finesse comes with art form and nimble form. So art form will give you a bonus to your awareness. It also gives you some random sort of flavor things, not just flavor, they technically come up. You gain painting and music expertises, and you also get advantage on crafting and entertainment tests. So
very interesting later on.
Yeah, really cool. Nimble form, which is the other option you get there. This one's all about being quick on the battlefield. It's going to give you +1 to speed and +2 focus, current and maximum focus. So that means a nimble form singer is really going to be able to move around the battlefield really quickly. That's what you'd expect from nimble form. Forms of resolve, they come with war form and work form. So war form is all about being stronger. You get a bonus to your strength. You get some deflect value as if you were wearing armor when you're not wearing armor to show the carapace that your character has. And you can jump really big. They can jump their full movement speed horizontally, and then vertically they can jump half their movement speed, which means they can really jump high. I love that.
I love it. It's so narratively cool. You can just imagine like an Eshonai jumping over a chasm.
Yeah,
like
you have to, right?
Very cool.
Yeah, so work form, the other option there for the forms of resolve. Work form gives you an extra willpower, and it also lets you ignore the exhaustion condition. So that's kind of niche, but I imagine that if your character was in a tricky situation and experiencing a lot of exhaustion, that's an option for you to turn into. It also sort of lets you appear as a dull form singer or as a parshman. So if there's a potential for maybe an espionage mission in the similar way that Relaine did, or Shen as he was called at the time. Okay, what's from there? Forms of wisdom. So a mediation form is the first form of wisdom. It gives you a presence, which is your charisma skill, really your ability to speak. And it also lets you use the aid reaction, which is a reaction you can do in your turn to give advantage to a friend when they're making a test of some kind. Normally it costs you a focus. They can do it without a focus, so it's just cost their reaction. So a really cool sort of support option there. And then there's also finally the scholar form. Scholar form is quite similar to actually going or speccing into the scholar heroic path. So it'll give you a bonus to your intellect, but it also gives you some like a cultural and utility expertise, very similar to the scholar path. And these actually directly link in with the key talent of being a scholar. So you can, you can really sort of link those together if you're that way inclined as well.
To sum that up, really we're saying that because of your ancestry, even just at level 1, humans are going to be able to spec into heroic paths and talents quicker than singers. We do get into that later. And singers, they just have a really badass tree that's all of their own that they can spec into where they can change forms. Very cool. All right, the last thing we have to touch on, hopefully this is where people are coming back if you skip the singers. This is going to be culture. Culture's really quick. At level 1 in your character creation, you're going to gain 2 cultural expertises. They are pretty stock standard what you would imagine. So you can choose expertises from any culture within Rashar. That could be a Lethi, it could be a listener culture, it could be Vaden. There are also custom cultures that you can choose from.
Yeah, it even gives a couple of examples. So the book gives examples of things like high society or military, experience in the military. Or you could have experience with ardents, religious experience, this sort of thing. And expertise, like you mentioned, we'll get into it further, but really it's sort of a little bit more open-ended than certainly your attributes and your skills. Those are very set out on your character sheet, whereas there is sort of the option to add custom things here. So there could be something that comes up in the game, a certain faction maybe that is specific to your GM that you could gain an expertise in. It doesn't have to be something from the book.
You bump the table so much.
I know. Step 2, your
starting paths, and this is where we're going to touch on heroic paths as well. So what is a starting path? What is a heroic path? These paths are kind of your professional identity. So
it's your class.
It's your class.
It's your class from other games, yeah.
Everybody, singers and humans alike, both must choose at level 1 a starting heroic path, and you'll dive into those.
Yeah, and I mean, don't be put off by us saying their classes, because they are actually much more flexible than classes from a lot of other games.
Super flexible.
But yeah, there are 6 heroic paths, and each of those has 3 specialties, not sub-paths, as I keep calling them. Yeah, and they also give you a few things. So let's get into those. So the 6 heroic path options are, you have Agent, you have Envoy, Hunter, Leader, Scholar, and Warrior. We're not going to dive into the specialties of each of them, but I will just give sort of an example here, and we'll go through it. But just so you know, you will get a skill for your starting path. So the first time at level 1 that you go into a heroic path, you will get a skill for free. Not any other time that you
just on your starting
go across. Path. That's right. And then each specialty has its own talent tree, which is where you will go when you're leveling up to look for talents to select. So let's have a look at the Warrior heroic path. So there are the 3 specialties for Warrior are Duelist and Shard Bearer and Soldier. Mm-hmm. So I think you can get ideas of what they're going to be. Duelist helps you with sword stances and fighting sort of one-on-one. The Shard Bearer specialty actually has a lot of different things that can help a character that does happen to have a Shard Plate or Shard Blade. There's bonuses there. And then the Soldier option as well has some really solid options for warriors as well. The skill that you'll gain, so you get a starting skill for this one, which is athletics. That's just one little bonus that you're going to have as a warrior, and then you gain the key talent. The key talent for warrior is vigilant stance. That'll give you the idea that warriors have stances that they move between. They can, as part of the key talent, move between stances as a free action, and vigilant stance allows them to be more flexible in combat. Specifically, it lets you take the dodge reaction and the reactive strikes reaction without using any focus. So these are things that are kind of costly for other characters to do, but warriors will be able to sort of control the battlefield that a little bit more by having their presence there and attacking other people in those sort of ways.
And like you said, super common to dip into a few different paths in this game.
Common and almost encouraged, yeah. Where a game like Dungeons and Dragons, you'll get an attribute point every 4 levels that you put into a single class. Mm-hmm. In this game, you're going to get an attribute gain no matter what class or specialty you put it into. Every 3 levels, you're going to gain that. So there's not really as much of a downside.
So like in Warrior, if we're talking about multi-pathing, you could have an Adolin and he would have the Warrior heroic path, or could, you can build them so many different ways, but he could have the Warrior heroic path, and he could spec into both this Duelist specialty and the Shardbearer specialty.
Absolutely, both specialties from the one heroic path can be chosen. Let's talk about a character. Let's talk about Kaladin, right? Everyone's favorite Surge Binder. So I think Kaladin is a pretty obvious example of a multi-path. Is that what it's called? Multi-path character. My goodness, he would be obviously. Well, I was going to say obviously a warrior soldier, but realistically, he would have started off as a scholar. Surgeon, yeah. Which is his sort of training. As a human, he could have done both, I guess, if you're making this character. But really going to be a scholar surgeon and a warrior soldier. And then, later on in the books, he's...
Spoilers!
Yeah, he's obviously, well, book 1 spoilers, I guess. He's going down a radiant path. And arguably into leadership as well, and a few others that are there.
I think one of the other ones that really piqued my interest, because we tried a few of these to see if we could work out what pathing they would take. I really enjoyed looking at Seth. For us, and we didn't agree on this fully at the start, but I think we landed on, for Seth, an Envoy Faithful and then a Hunter Assassin.
Definitely has the faithful vibes, someone that's dedicated to what they do. And Hunter, he's got to be an assassin. He is an assassin.
Well, it depends on where you land in the books, right?
Yeah, so I originally thought Agent, because I was sort of thinking of Agent as the roguish kind of class option for this game. You can have the spy, a thief, investigator, but that's not what he is. He's an assassin.
And that's the thing. You can kind of, this is what we're talking about with the concept. You can have a concept of a character at the start of, I want to build something that's kind of similar to Seth. And then when you're actually building your character, it can be done in so many different ways where it's like slightly adjusted to maybe what you thought, or you might have a disagreement in how it actually gets built out. It's, like we said, super, super flexible, unlike most other TTRPGs where you kind of narrowly focus in on the one class and some people subclass, but like not a whole bunch. This is, I would say, actually the opposite. You're really encouraged to multipath. I also want to touch on, before we finish up with pathing, your radiant paths are going to be available to start speccing into at level 2 onwards. There's 9 radiant paths. So we're not going to touch on it's a lot of content. We're not going to touch on all of those in this video, but our upcoming videos, our plan is to next deep dive into the heroic paths first, hopefully, the 9 radiant paths, and we also want to obviously get a little bit more involved in the singer talent tree as well.
Yeah, of course.
So stay tuned. Lots to talk through.
Attributes.
I'm going to sneeze. La 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 la.
Alright, smash out attributes.
Don't sneeze, don't sneeze.
Bless you.
Alright, you ready? Alright, step 3 is choose your attributes. In a nutshell, attributes are your character's like core capabilities. They help define how good or bad you're going to be at certain things. In my opinion, attributes are the most important stat or numbers on your character sheet, because they help dictate and determine how other things are calculated and how well you can do in
a variety of things, really.
A variety of things, yeah. They actually weave their way through your character sheet in a number of ways.
Yeah.
Important thing to note about attributes. So they are grouped into the 3 facets. We've touched on these before, but the 3 facets on your character sheet, which is going to be somewhere, there is the physical facet, the cognitive facet, and the spiritual facet. Each of those facets has 2 attributes that are assigned to it.
Yeah, let's go a really sort of high level look at it. So strength, you're thinking how healthy your character is, how physically strong they are, so things like how much they can lift, how good they are at pushing down a door or whatever it might be, or using heavy weapons. You've got your speed, which is really just how quickly and nimbly your character can move. Think about also things like stealthing and thievery, that sort of stuff, and light weapons. You've got your intellect, which is how smart your character is. It's a good representation of the things that they know, the history that they might know, the different skills that they have. And it comes into things like crafting and that sort of stuff as well. You've then got, we'll also probably double back on intellect. Those later on when we talk about expertises.
Yeah.
There's willpower, which is a representation of sort of your ability to keep going in a fight. Is that a Google alarm?
That's a Google alarm.
Hey Google, stop. Thanks, Goog. Appreciate it. Hey Google, stop. I'm going to keep going. You've got your willpower, which is your grit or determination to keep going in a fight, is sort of how I would think of it. It determines your recovery die, as well as the amount of focus that your character has.
Yeah.
There is awareness. Your awareness is going to determine how good your character is at perceiving things, your senses, including if you're in complete darkness or something else is sort of obscuring your senses. It will have to give you an idea of how far you can see or hear things. You finally have your presence. Think of it as charisma. It's your talking to people. It's your making an inspiring speech before a battle, that sort of thing. It also does include your connections, which is an interesting thing for later on in the game. Not so much at character creation, but helps the GM to sort of determine how many people your character might know in a location as well, based off your presence.
Yeah. Now at level 1, you're going to have 12 points to assign to your attributes. Obviously, we've talked about the higher the better, depending on what you want your character to be good at. Regular people in Roshar, so not adventurers, generally won't go above a 2 in any specific attribute. At level 1, your player characters cannot go above a 3. So you're not going to be the best speaker in the whole world.
But already at level 1, you're
better than
more
the
impressive than the
player.
average person, yeah.
And then, unless you get additional bonuses because of talents or expertises, the maximum you can generally go to at all is 5 specs into an attribute.
Yeah.
All right, step 4, skills and expertises. We'll touch on skills first, considering we've just talked about attributes. So skills are basically what you use when your character is attempting a task. If that success or failure is going to impact the game in any kind of meaningful way, your GM is probably going to ask you to make a skill test on that task to see if you succeed or fail. In this RPG, hopefully we've still got up our character sheet somewhere. Your skills have a max rank of 5, so you can dip into each skill 5 times if you're getting an extra a +1 in a skill.
You don't have to do the math on the fly. You have a section on your character sheet where you're sort of putting down what your modifiers are for each different thing. But I like to think of your attributes as like how good your character sort of innately is at things, whereas the skill is like how long, like a training almost, like your
you can learn to be better at this skill.
Things,
At level 1, you're going to gain a skill based on your starting path, like we talked about. So depending on your starting path, you get a starting skill, so you get to spec in 1 there. And then you get an additional 4 to distribute against whatever skills you want, really. It doesn't have to be ones that you've done with your attributes. It can be whatever skill you want.
There's a maximum of 2 ranks in a skill for character creation.
2 for character creation, yeah. And when you are doing these skills or looking at your skills and you're rolling to see if your skill is going to succeed or not, that is going to go against, the test is going to go against a DC. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so DC is an abbreviation you'll see come up in the book fairly often. It means difficulty class, but what I really would think of it as is your target number. So most rolls that you do in the game, it will tell you as part of that ability or whatever it is you're using what your target is going to be. But some examples, if you are making a physical attack against someone, their physical defense is most likely going to be what the target is. So the difficulty class would equal their physical defense. There are other times where the GM will come up with a difficulty class based on the difficulty of a task. So if you were trying to do a really easy task, it might be a low one, like a 10. Mm-hmm. And if you're doing a really difficult task, it could be 20 or even higher. So you have to roll really, really well to be able to achieve it.
Yeah. So that's skills, pretty stock standard for any game players out there. Let's dip into expertises because they're a bit different.
Yeah, expertise is almost like your permission to use a skill in some ways. So certain things in the game are not, it's just not possible for your character to be able to do it without an expertise. And we'll go through, there are some different types of expertise. I'll give an example of what that means though. For example, if your party was to come across a really fancy fabrial that had been made, not just anyone in the party would be able to pick that fabrial up and have an idea of how it works.
Yeah.
However, someone with fabrial crafting expertise, for example, might make an argument to the GM, hey, my character knows lots about fabrials, can I work this out? I've got this expertise, and that would be when the GM would let them make a roll on it. So let's go through a bit of a list here of what there are. We talked earlier at the start of character creation about cultural expertise. Yep. So this is the first example I would give about what an expertise is. This just means if you have the cultural expertise for Alethkar, there's going to be an expectation that it's assumed that you have some knowledge there. So if you wanted to know something about Alethkar's society, the GM could assume that your character would be available, like would know that knowledge just because they have the expertise in it. There wouldn't need to be a test that's there. Yep. There are other things from that though. So cultural is obviously the first one. We then have armor expertise and weapon expertise. So this determines whether or not you can use expert traits of certain weapons and certain armor. So there are expert traits that are like an extra thing that a weapon or armor can do that's only available if you have the expertise in it. So that's your armor and weapon expertise. There is also utility expertise. So utility expertise is
very broad.
Yeah, is where it gets really broad. So this is not a list of expertises that are all in the book. There are some examples given in the book, but Utility expertise is one where it gets really broad. So you've got things like crafting. I would think of weapon crafting and armor crafting as utility expertises, but there are also the book lists animal care and engineering and things like this, all under this section here. So even riding horses and that's and religion, certain things like that can come under a utility expertise. The final category. So these are all ones that you will sort of touch on with in relation to your intellect. But expertises, these are all ones that you're able to select as a character when you have a chance to select an expertise. There is also specialist expertise. So specialist expertise is kind of restricted. So it can't be added to based off your intellect score, but it also really is only something that's granted by a talent, by your GM directly, or as a reward for one of your goals. And this can include things like fabrial crafting as opposed to just regular item crafting. It could be really specific history about, say, the Singers or the Knights Radiant. And it can also be things like shard blades and shard plate are a specialist expertise.
Yeah, so they're the restricted ones. I think I do want to just point out with the cultural, armor, weapon, and utility expertises, one, that's not a finite list. You can talk to your GM about another expertise that you might have, and that's freely kind of encouraged, I guess, is to kind of branch out. You're not restricted to specifically the ones that it gives as examples. But at starting level 1, we did mention we'll round back to intellect and how that can impact expertises. So for every +1 you've got to your intellect, from level 1, you get to choose an additional expertise. So every time you get an additional intellect in the attributes, you get an extra expertise.
Yeah, so you'll get your free couple of cultural expertise at the start, plus an extra expertise based off every intellect that you've got. Oh, that's going to be hard to get used to. Step 5.
Step 5, talents. We're going to do this one pretty quick because we have talked already a little bit about talents in some of these other sections. So you'd probably have a relatively good idea at the moment. But we'll bring up one of the talent trees so that you can have a visual because it really helps. So when we're talking about pathing, and this is the Singer paths or the heroic paths or the radiant paths, all paths will have your path name, for example, scholar. And then you've got your specialties within that path. So scholar has artifabrian, strategist, and surgeon, like we talked about. Each of those specialties comes with its own talent tree. And the talent tree, which we'll bring up, is I guess it's kind of like how you spec into that specialty.
Yeah.
The further that you go into the talents and the talent trees, the better you're going to be at that specialty. So if you spec super hard into surgeon, you're going to get skills and talents that are going to make you better at being a surgeon.
And if you just think of them as like the things that you're gaining every time you level up, pretty much. So there's a couple of ways you get them. We talked already about ancestry at the start. So humans are obviously going to get one ancestry types will get one just for being level 1. But then humans will get an additional one. Singers will get their key talent and the first talent from their changing forms as well. So the ancestry is the first types of talents you're going to get. And then every time you level up, you can choose a talent. Now that can be from, like you've sort of said, it can be from the same specialty that you're already in, a different heroic path. It could be a singer going into their forms more as their talents that they're choosing, or it could be a radiant talent. Any of those count as a talent. And I think that's all we need to really talk about with it.
I think maybe the only other call out, if you're brand new to it, is that you've got your key talent, which is just what you get for opting into a particular path, or a heroic path. And then from there, your talents build on top of that.
Yeah. Cool. Let's move on to equipment.
Done.
Equipment.
Step 6, equipment. So equipment for this chapter of character creation really combines, I guess, what equipment is and what's out there, but also your starting kits. So level 1 of character creation, you get to choose one of 6 starting kits, and this really represents what you have with you or what you're carrying with you when your character is starting on their adventuring journey. So there's 6 kits to choose from at character creation. There's the academic, artisan, military, courtier, prisoner, and underworld kits. Now, your starting kits can be made up of but won't always include. We'll give you
Each
some
one's a little bit
examples.
different. Yeah.
It can be made up of weapons, armor. They're pretty self-explanatory. Equipment, which is also self-explanatory, but generally that's just your everyday adventuring items.
Gear, yeah.
There is a massive list of equipment and what equipment can mean.
You'll see some examples in a moment.
Spheres we haven't really touched on. So at level 1, spheres really means money, or your like what you trade for things. So at level 1, even in character creation, if you have spheres in your starting kit, you can opt to use those spheres to buy extra equipment before you even start the campaign.
Yeah, with no restriction on where going to a shop or anything like that. The idea is that you can just open up the Stormlight Handbook and purchase anything from one of the equipment tables or in the items chapter in chapter 7.
If you've got spheres in your starting
If you've
kit.
got not every option does. And then, I mean, it's worth mentioning that this is the Stormlight Archive. Spheres hold Stormlight, so they are also relevant to your investiture later on. So
Maybe don't spend it.
Kind of more than just money, yeah.
You've also then got potentially an expertise, maybe in your starting kit, and connections. And we'll give you a quick explanation of, or example of what connections might be.
Yeah, there's a few different connection options, but we'll definitely get to that in a moment. So, do we want to dive into the academic kit?
Yeah, we'll give you 2 examples. Let's go academic and prisoner.
Yeah, okay. So, we mentioned weapons first. You get a choice of a few things with this one. So it says knife, sling, or staff. Mm-hmm. So a choice of a few different weapons. These are all light weapons. You get the uniform as armor. The uniform doesn't actually give you really any defensive stats, but it is what your character's wearing or can wear. You also get the equipment of, I'm going to read this one because it'll give you an idea of what equipment is like. So a backpack with common clothing, ink pen, bottle of ink, 10 sheets of paper, 3 empty vials, a block of wax, a reference book on a topic of your choice approved by your GM, and 1 dose of weak poison.
Makes sense for an academic kit.
Yeah, and these are things that are listed in the guide, so you can have a look through to give ideas. You also get 3d12 marks, so that is money that you can spend from the start as well. In this one, you get an additional expertise. So taking the academic kit, you gain the literature expertise. If you already have it, you can sort of select a different expertise that's, a different cultural or utility expertise that's relevant. And then as a connection, you don't gain any connections from this kit. And the second kit we'll talk about, I think is worth talking about, the prisoner kit. Probably has the least there. So for weapons and armor and spheres and additional expertise, it's all a none for the prisoner starting option. The equipment you get is ragged clothes and manacles.
Which I think you said are really hard to get off.
You could use them in theory. The ragged clothes give you advantage when you're trying to explain to someone that you're destitute, that you need help. So
not all bad.
Not great. But the connection is the important part for this one. So this one, much like Kaladin in the first book, you've attracted a radiant spren. So essentially you're going to start off with a relationship already existing with a spren, and this means that if you do take a radiant path later on, you can immediately tick 2 marks off the goal for that. So we will talk about goals in a later video, but goals are probably my favorite thing about the Cosmere RPG. Actually, they are really important. So this is a way to immediately have a connection going there so that you can become a Radiant faster, if that's what you're interested in.
Connections are a very cool part of this RPG.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's it for equipment.
Yeah, have a look through. It's worth having a look through the different kits.
The list is very big.
There is nothing stopping you from taking any particular kit as well. So you've got your 6 heroic paths. There are 6 kits, but you don't have to. They don't line up necessarily. You can take whichever one you'd like.
You probably want to make it make sense with your character's story in some way, but yes. No restriction.
Speaking of story, step 7,
Step 7, story.
All right.
This one is maybe one of my favorite chapters. It comes in a couple of parts. We're going to talk about your purpose as a character, your obstacles as a character, and your goals and rewards as a character, which is chunky. So your purpose is your character's main drive. It is what defines you, motivates you, inspires you. And it does give some examples of what your purpose might be. It's definitely not limited to this list. You can make up your own purpose, so long as you're talking through it with your GM. But some examples might be that your purpose could be save others, seek truth, push yourself to new heights, find connection, seek justice, preserve life. And those purposes you might notice, some of them quite strongly connect to or resonate with Radiant Paths. Your purpose, if you really want to go a Radiant Path, should probably align in some way.
Doesn't have to, and also doesn't have to be as sort of simple as those example ones. You can have your whatever works for your character. If you have something in mind, a drive for your character. Yeah.
It can be as broad as or specific as you want.
Yeah.
And it can probably also change if you're going to have a character arc happen as part of your journey, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Your obstacle is like one of my favorite parts of character creation. It's your flaw, your major flaw as a character. It's what stands in the way of your character getting to their purpose or achieving their purpose. So some of these are the examples. I've chosen one of these for my character, but examples are deep regret, specific fear, spite, self-doubt, or mistrust of others. Again, not limited to that list. I love the self-doubt one. That's what I've used with my character, and I flesh it out quite deeply. I love having flaws. I think it really allows you as a player to not min-max and not feel like you have to do exactly what may mechanically fit right in the moment. A flaw allows you to kind of deviate and say, well, I actually wouldn't do that. Even if that's the best option, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I think you can sort of spot the difference between a min-maxer and someone that's there for more of the roleplay side of it, just based off whether or not they can make a decision that's not optimal in the moment, based off their character and what their character's flaws are, or in this case, the obstacle.
Yeah. I rely on flaws and obstacles quite a bit in my role-playing.
Yeah, and if you're not sure of how to play out a really complicated obstacle, it can be something really simple. A phobia is always a really easy one to sort of go with.
Something you just absolutely wouldn't do regardless of the situation.
Yeah.
Wouldn't harm an animal.
Yeah, exactly. Things like that, that you can just sort of pull out, and it's an instant indicator that you're playing to your character. I think they're a really useful tool.
I love purposes and obstacles. Goals, like we said, are a little bit more chunky, so I'm going to leave that one to you.
Yeah, I love goals. So, look, purpose and obstacle won't be too different for anyone that has played Dungeons & Dragons or other TTRPGs where you sort of have some basic background things. Goals are a little bit different. In the Cosmere RPG, goals are like a short-term character arc or objective, something that is your character is sort of pushing for at that time, and they are sort of mechanically tied to your character sheet. You have some tick boxes next to each goal that shows your progress on that goal, and it even says specifically in the book that you should expect to every session or so, maybe every other session, to progress on the goals that you have. So these are something that your game master can be aware of you having, and actively is encouraged within the book to sort of weave this into the story that's being told.
Yeah, I think the big difference between a purpose and a goal for me is that goals are, at least in this game, really tangible. Like they're much more cemented in your character sheet, in how you progress as a character.
Session to session, they come up. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So some examples. You can also have multiple as well. So you could start off with a goal and then have other goals added for different reasons. So that's another thing to keep in mind. You can have them automatically added for certain things in the game. For example, starting down a Radiant Path will automatically add a goal to speak the first ideal. Yeah. So there are examples like that. The examples it gives for sort of starting goals: become a noble, find a missing person, fulfill a specific oath, repay a debt of gratitude, or get revenge. Keep in mind, these are sort of short term, so they could be sort of 3 to 6, maybe a few more sessions until that goal is completed.
Or not completed. It specifically does call out that you can be successful. I don't know what the middle one is, maybe partially successful, or that you can actually fail on achieving that goal. And it does support you in how your character can respond to it.
Yeah.
Specifically if you don't meet your goal, if you don't ever meet your goal.
Yeah. So we'll do a larger breakdown on goals and rewards. There is a chapter dedicated to goals and rewards in the book. It's quite in depth, but it actually is nearly important as the leveling system, I feel. There are some really awesome sort of ways that you can gain things in the game that you wouldn't be able to gain other ways. through setting a goal and then working with
Getting
your
the
GM
reward.
to get to the end of it. Yeah, so the reward could give you anything from, you might have a goal of getting a shard blade, and that could be the reward that you get, but it also could be that you got to the final jewel, you stepped every part through the goal, every different step that's there, you tick the boxes, you get to the end where you're having your big jewel to maybe win your shard, and you lose it, but you could be seen by a patron that's in the audience and gain sort of recognition in that way, or you could still get money that comes from it, or you could get some other reward that's there. So the reward system is really fleshed out, so that's good to know.
All right, step 8, final calculations before you get to play the game.
Make sure there's no empty boxes on
No
your sheet
empty
before you move
boxes on your sheet unless you have specifically nothing in that box. But for your stats, we'll talk about them, I guess, final calculations in the 3 facets. So we'll go through the physical, the cognitive, and the spiritual calculations. And this is going to help inform the rest of the stats on your character sheet, because all of these ones are going to be derived by specific calculations based on all the other things that we've already chosen, right?
Yeah, sometimes your talents and that sort of thing can affect your final stats. So
yeah, let's do it.
Alrighty, starting with physical. So I will go through the different things here that are affected by physical stats. The physical resource that you get is your health. So each different facet sort of has a different resource associated with it. For physical, it's your health points. This is just how alive your character is, and you calculate it by doing the number is 10 plus your strength attribute plus anything you might gain from talents.
This one, I think, automatically does it if you're going through Demiplane or Roll.
Absolutely, yeah, these ones will. Okay, then you have a deflect section there. Deflect is something that we haven't actually really talked much about on the channel before. It's based off the armor that you have. It's a value that you get that will reduce the amount of incoming damage of that type. We mentioned before, Warform have some basic armor that they get. One of the things that they get is a deflect value, even without wearing armor. Okay, so that's going to be determined by the items that you have in your armor, so don't worry about that as far as your stats. Lifting and carrying capacity, so this is based off a table, based off your strength score, so we'll flash it up here, but also, this table's available to check that. And your movement rate is another table. This one's based off your speed, so you can note down your movement rate as well, and that is every time you're taking a move action on your turn, you can move that far.
Yep.
Alrighty, moving on to the cognitive facet. So you've got your resource for the cognitive facet is your focus. Yep. Focus is calculated as 2 plus your willpower stat. So at the start, if you have 3 points into willpower, you could have 5 focus. But it also has to do with your bonuses and penalties as well. Maybe you are, a singer that is starting off with extra focus based off the form that you're in, that sort of thing. You also have your recovery die. The recovery die is another thing that's based on a table, this time with your willpower stat being the relevant thing. So take a look at this table. That one will tell you exactly what you need to put there. All right, onto the spiritual facet. You have your investiture. That is the resource for spiritual. We mentioned this before. You calculate your investiture based off whichever is higher out of presence or awareness. Yep. So the calculation is 2 plus whichever is higher, and then any other additional things you have that impact that. You also have your senses range. Senses range is another table based off awareness, so you can have a look at that here. And you have your establishing connections, which we think is worthwhile putting. It's on sheet 2 of your character sheet.
Yeah, it's not with the rest of the stats, but it is there.
But it's still something that's worth sort of having. Another table based off presence this time, so check it out. Put that on there so that you at least know when it's needed. And then I guess for all 3 of the facets, there is a defense score that is applicable for each one. So the score is determined by looking at the 2 different attributes from that facet and adding them together, and then adding 10. So 10 plus strength and speed is your physical defense.
And what does that actually do? Because that's pretty important.
Yeah, so that's what determines the DC, the target number that people will need to be rolling when they're targeting your physical defense. So if they're trying to stab your character, they're going to need to roll an attack test that is as high or higher than what your physical armor is.
Physical defense.
Physical defense, yes, correct. And you could have a character that has low physical defense, but maybe they're really high with their cognitive or spiritual defense, which might help them with a surge binder trying to attack them with a surge, or that sort of thing.
All right. I think that is it for final calculations. You'd be ready to play the game at this point.
Oh, gorge.
All right. I think that we've made characters, or hopefully we've at least demystified the character sheet for you and supported you in some way in your character creation. This is a chunky topic. We realize that we have touched on a lot of content and a lot of different things. Rest assured, we are going to deep dive into a lot of things. Our plan for upcoming videos is to go straight into the heroic paths, probably first, your radiant paths, your singer paths.
Starting with a scholar.
Deep dive into them because I'm super excited to see what they actually mean and how you could really build those characters. But if there's anything that we've touched on that you were confused about or want to know more about, let us know, as always, in the comments. Thank you to everybody
Huge thank you to anyone that stayed this far in the video. Chunky video.
Stayed this far. Especially big thanks to the people who have commented and left some really valuable feedback. So appreciate you guys. As always, like, subscribe, notification bell.
Do not like the video. Subscribe.
Yeah, please subscribe.
We appreciate it. Thanks, dudes.
Thanks.